The S25 Ultra versus the iPhone 17 Pro Max. Is that all you've got, Apple? Let's go. When I originally compared the S25 Ultra to the 17 Pro Max, I never imagined that in a couple weeks' time, I would actually be comparing them, but this time physically. I got slated for doing that comparison. Rightfully so, I guess. A lot of you said you can't really compare a phone without trying it first. So here I went and bought it to try it. I've documented my initial thoughts in a video and my initial adjustment period to iOS, but then I thought I better compare it to this. I had to switch away from my Fold 7 to do this, so I hope you can appreciate that because that's a hard phone to put down. Fundamentally, there's different approaches here that these phones have to what they think a smartphone should be. Hardware, similarities, but fundamental differences. Software, camera experience, all very different ideas of what should be done. Starting with the hardware and the design, the two approaches were both different this year in terms of why they went with what they did. Samsung tried really hard across all their lineup this year to bring the weight and the thickness down to make sure it felt an aesthetic in the hand. Lightweight and thin while sacrificing none of the power. 8.2 millimeters on the Ultra and 218 grams. And normally specs and that sort of stuff isn't really my jam, but when you consider what Samsung has packed in to that design, you've got to take your hands off to the engineers. 5,000 mAh battery, S Pen support, 12 to 16 gigabytes of RAM, quad camera setup. There's a lot that Samsung have been able to put in there whilst maintaining light and thin. Apple went opposite. They saw that they needed to make the Pro phone a Pro phone. They needed to increase its capabilities. They shied away from titanium and went to aluminium. They talk about it being because of heat dissipation, but there's obviously probably a cost involved too, that aluminium is cheaper to make than titanium is. It's fair enough, but it also has a practical use case in that the phone does run cooler because of it. They have a glass cutout though, because they needed to maintain wireless charging because you cannot do that through a metal frame. So they've kind of come up with this design where it's almost two-tone in its finish. They've tried really hard to match it, but you can absolutely tell there's a difference in color. And to accommodate things like a vapor chamber and a bigger battery, they had to make it bigger. So it's 8.7 millimeters in thickness and it's 231 grams in weight. When you consider that they had to increase their phone in size to accommodate more, whereas Samsung decreased and maintained, that's a pretty big achievement on Samsung's behalf because you've still got a vapor chamber over there on Samsung's side, and now Apple does too. It's a weird thing that's happened. Just a small opinion, Samsung copped it this year for their lack of hardware innovation. But really, when you consider that their hardware innovation this year was to make things thinner and lighter, whilst sacrificing no power or performance, they've done a pretty incredible job at doing that. Because Apple, in order to match, I guess, internals, not output-wise, I'm just talking about pure internals, they had to make the phone bigger to accommodate. Samsung didn't have to do that. They reduced whilst maintained and still increased performance too, because the A Elite for Galaxy is a great chip. Apple just seemed limited in their ability to do that. And I think the Air is a really good example of that ethos. Samsung with their Edge, they managed to fit in and sacrifice a little bit less than what Apple did with a thin form factor and a lightweight phone. Bigger battery, extra camera, vapor chamber in it, dual speaker. iPhone Air, single camera, no vapor chamber, single speaker. It's just a real odd sacrifice to achieve a design. Samsung don't seem to have to make those same sacrifices. Can you imagine if Samsung decided to just use the space that Apple have used, what they could make with it? Oh, they did. It's called the Fold 7. It folds in half. Obviously, design is not something that, everyone will appreciate. Some people like it, some people don't. The S25 Ultra is a clean and minimal aesthetic, and I think that's great. I like the minimal nature of it. 17 Pro Max is a busy phone. Some people might like it, looks a bit different to look at. It's not just this plain slab of glass and camera lenses on the back anymore, but it is busy. There's the cameras, there's the camera island, there's the other flash and the 3D depth sensor on the other side. Then you've got the glass cutout. Factor all that in, it's a lot to look at. But then you add in the buttons. Apple just, in recent years, just been adding buttons for some reason. They moved the mute switch to an action button. Then you've got two buttons for the volume. Then on the other side, you've got a camera control button, which is just the worst. And then you've got the power button or the Siri button that's there as well. There's just a lot of buttons, and sometimes you don't know which one you're pressing. Counteract that to Samsung, you've got two. Well, three if you want to count the volume as two. You've got the power button and then the volume rocker. That's it. That's all you've got. The rest of the phone is clean and minimal. and there's nothing else to press or accidentally press. Samsung had the camera rings on the back of the S25 Ultra, the black ones that not everyone vibed with. Must have been the only one to like it. I definitely think the black rings added that little pop of contrast, especially with the blue color that I've got. I do understand the move from Apple to make it more functional. It's like their MacBook Pros. They made them heavier and bigger, but they're more functional and do more things. Apple, in their mind, must have had that same thought. The only problem is they haven't really made the iPhone do more, but we'll get to that. As far as their feel goes, weight aside, I actually think I like the approach from iPhone here. Because of the way that the aluminium is just one cutout frame, it melds together and it's kind of soft on the back and in the corners. Samsung, in its own unique way, the flat titanium does feel nice to grip. It's a very nice aesthetic in the hand and it feels secure. The iPhone is a little bit slippery and you might need a case, and we'll talk about cases from today's sponsor Torras, adding that extra bit of grip a little bit later on. But aesthetically, without a case, you do notice that it's a bit softer versus the S25 Ultra. But honestly, when you pick up the Samsung after using the iPhone, the Ultra feels like a feather compared to the 17 Pro Max. It's just that extra bit of weight. It's only 14 grams, which is crazy. 13 even. It's 13 grams. But it does make a difference. Displays are up next. Both displays are honestly pretty incredible. Day-to-day content, especially viewing stuff, whether it be social media, browsing the internet, both do an amazing job. Even when you're taking photos outdoors, the brightness level, immaculate. And that's been good to see that side by side, that the 17 Pro Max has that incredible display. What hasn't been as good though is the much hyped or talked about anti-reflective coating on the iPhone. It's just not as good. It just doesn't bounce things off in a way as much as what the S25 Ultra does. Yes, Apple put it on all their displays, but when you have them side by side and when you compare them, you really notice the difference, especially on things like always on display, because the blacks are just deeper and richer because you've got less reflections bouncing off or hitting them, whatever way you want to describe it. I think often when people compare displays, a lot of people look at what you get and that's it. What you don't get with iPhones is the ability to tune the display to your liking. If you look at the colors and think that's not my preference, display settings, well, I said it in the other video, what display settings? There's really nothing in there that shows you what you can do. Contrast that to the S25 Ultra and just any other Samsung. You've got display settings for days. You can change anything about the display, whether that be the resolution, whether that be the actual style and color profile. It can be vivid, or you've also got natural. Natural is still probably more vivid than what the iPhone display is, but then even you go back to vivid, you can customize the vivid slider. You can make it more vivid. You can advance customization, change the hue colors. There's so much in there that you can tweak to make it yours. And again, that's just my preference. I like having those options. Some people might just prefer what they give you is what you get and you just deal with it. But for me, I like the fact that with Samsung, you have the ability to change it. The iPhone also houses Face ID in their display. And I was very curious about Face ID. Having used the iris scanner on the Note 7 years ago, I think it finished on the Note 9 was the last Samsung to have it. I was very curious as to how I would adapt back to Face ID using that when I've used the fingerprint scanner for so long. As a feature, man, it's near flawless. Understand why people talk about it a lot, because it's very quick at recognizing you. It can recognize you on angles. And I like the fact that it sort of is littered throughout for security measures. But there's a but coming, because if it's flat on a table or if you are wearing sunglasses, it can't recognize you. I tried setting up an alternative appearance with sunglasses on, told me it couldn't do it. Said I've got something blocking my face. If someone knows how to get around that, please let me know, because I've tried a few things and it hasn't worked. Comparing it to the ultrasonic fingerprint scanner, what I really like with the ultrasonic fingerprint scanner is the fact that I know where it is. And when I pull the phone out of my pocket, I know where to go and it's unlocked by the time I get it up here. Face ID, there's a couple of steps. You've got to pull it out of your pocket, look at it, and then swipe up. By the time I get my S25 Ultra out of my pocket, it's unlocked because I know where that fingerprint scanner is. And the thing is, on a desk as well, pressing the fingerprint scanner is just more convenient because it's flat on a table. I don't have to arch over or pick it up to look at it. Face ID is probably faster, but the process is slower because of the fact you have to swipe up. Samsung, in their settings for their lock screen and always on display and Face ID that you can set up on there too, they give you the option to toggle that off. Again, this is what the difference is. Extra toggles and settings that you can change. That's a pattern that you're going to keep seeing throughout this whole video. I can't talk about the design of the iPhone without talking about MagSafe. the fact that you have the ability to chuck a MagSafe wallet on the back of your phone without the need for an accessory, definitely nice. I've not got any really MagSafe accessories. So for me, I've kind of got to either decide whether I want to go down that route or just not worry about it entirely. I've gone this far without it. I probably won't need it. Keep going. Samsung obviously have their own reason for not implementing it up till now. I think the S Pen on the Ultra is a large part of that. And if they can't do it on the Ultra, they sure as hell can't do it on every other phone. Cameras are next. Now, this comparison could just descend into a pixel peeping contest because a lot of the camera comparisons between these two phones, that's ultimately what people do. Myself included, I've done that as well. But here on Tech with Benefits, I don't want to just do that because there's way more to talk about. There's hardware, there's processing, and then there's the camera modes and the camera app itself. From a hardware side of things, they've actually never been closer. The flexibility that both of these phones offer, you've got the 3 cameras on the 17 Pro Max, all of them 48 megapixel, plus the 4x telephoto. Then you've got the 4 cameras on the Ultra, 3 of them minimum 50. How do I explain this? A 50 megapixel ultra wide, the 200 megapixel main, a 10 megapixel 3x telephoto, and a 50 megapixel 5x telephoto. And that camera is stunning. There's a lot of range between them. You've got ultra wide, you've got macro capabilities. The Ultra has telemacro capabilities. You've got high resolution, you've got RAW, plenty of options for you to be able to cycle between and choose your poison. But for me, hardware-wise, the 17 Pro Max, that new telephoto is not the star of the show. And for good reason, I'll talk about that later. The big star of the show here is the selfie camera. Apple introduced this as center stage. And the reason why is because it literally does that. And it's a feature that they've had on their MacBooks for a while, and they just brought that marketing name in. But it's excellent. This camera, with its square sensor, can be orientated in portrait or landscape, and it doesn't sacrifice any quality because it can be 4K 30 in both orientations, whilst holding it portrait. Immediately, I went into content opportunity mode. But to take advantage of a feature like that, you need the right accessory. What enhances the feature in this case is a case from Torras. You can use the kickstand at the back and flip it out and lay it flat on a table, and you've got a tripod everywhere you go with that new selfie camera. The best part about it too is this also protects the phone, especially as reports of the aluminium scratching up with the iPhone 17 Pro Max. You'll need something that really protects it, and the Torras absolutely does. I mentioned before about the grip. Well, this case absolutely gives you that extra grip, whilst also providing the cushioning for that aluminium frame. You can see it with the air cushioning in the corners that's going to protect it from drops. And of course, you want to protect those rear cameras because it's got that lip around it. That means when you lay it flat on a table, it's not going to get scratched up. But using the case isn't just about creating content, it's also about consuming it. What I loved about the stand with my S25 Ultra is the fact that you can prop it up into multiple angles to consume media. This is no different. Any orientation, whether you want to be watching something in portrait, in short form content while you're sitting at your desk, or whether you're out and about somewhere and just want to have it propped up to watch something on a table, you've got that option with the case and the stand. And with that massive 6.9-inch display, you're going to get some really good viewing experiences out of it, minus the dynamic island. It's such a powerful addition to the Pro Max, it can truly transform your experience with it. Content creation, content consumption, all of it, and protection on top of it as well. Link for the case is in the description. Thank you, Torras, for sponsoring the video. So, processing time. This is where I guess I did actually study the photos quite heavily. I do have a 5K Samsung monitor behind me where I really got in close to really see the differences. But honestly, because they're not Samsung versus Samsung, there is actually a lot of difference that you didn't even need to zoom in to notice. The thing is, no one, regular customers, will never have these two side by side to compare. But I did, and I have, so here's my findings. The immediate difference that I noticed was detail. The iPhone 17 Pro Max shoots in default resolution of 24 megapixels. Samsung default is 12, and most people will shoot in this default way. And when you look at photos that you've taken with the cameras, you'll notice that difference. The iPhone 17 Pro Max just picks up more detail, whether it be fabric in clothes, whether it just be detailing things like grass. It really does a lot to bring that detail out. Samsung really should bring 24 megapixel as a native option. The photos you're seeing, you just see that detailed difference. You've got Expert RAW, which can do 24 megapixel, but that's an extra mode you've got to download first and then swipe to. Default should be 24, just should be. And that's pretty much evident across the cameras that you take, whether that be the ultra wide or the 4x versus 5x telephoto. that detail difference is present. You really notice it. Obviously, if you switch to 50 megapixel or 200 megapixel, you can solve that problem, but it's a problem that shouldn't be there in the first place. Samsung have the processing capability to do 24 megapixel. Expert Raw shows you that. They really should just make it native. In terms of the processing, what I noticed is that Apple kept everything brighter, but very flat. There wasn't like a lot of contrast or a lot of color to it. It was just like a flat, bright image. Samsung heavily contrasted, and also the shadows were very dark. Not like black, but they were darkened compared to the 17 Pro Max, which lifted the shadows a lot. And that really didn't matter whether it was taking photos of people or whether I was taking photos of landscape and outdoor situations. That existed. In a lot of situations too, the iPhone just tended to make the photos a little bit warm, like a really yellow tinge over the top of it for no reason whatsoever. I don't really understand why. I will also highlight that Apple does have photographic styles. This is where you can actually sort of change the style of the photo, and it actually changes the photo at a core level. And I noticed some things. You can have a look yourself now at the photographic styles, whether or not they're for your liking. But I feel like most people will just shoot it standard, but you do have those styles there if you want to. The actual telephoto camera was something I really wanted to try because I really feel like Apple put attention into that this year. And yeah, I think they did a good job. Again, that 24 megapixel is definitely evident, but there's one problem with that telephoto camera that for me makes it almost unusable pretty much all the time. It's focus distance. Samsung's 5x camera can act as a telemacro. It's not like super close, but 24 to 30 centimeters roughly, you can get close to something, snap a clear shot with the 5x zoomed in. The iPhone, the 4x1 is about a meter. And I realized that and I was really surprised by it. I'm not sure why that Apple didn't want to make the hardware suit closer distance, especially when you got a time of flight sensor in there that can kind of help with focal length, but they just didn't do it. It's just not there. You can see it physically changing in real time. It's bizarre. Let's have a look at these two videos here. First one that I'm showing you is a 5x video taken with the S25 Ultra of the 17 Pro Max. Clean, aesthetic, you've got the blurred bokeh, detailed and crisp. The iPhone with the 4x camera of the S25 Ultra couldn't do it. It was using the main camera, and you can see it's not quite as sharp and it doesn't quite give you that same impact. That's the difference because it can't quite focus on that and it automatically switches to the main camera. Because there's no camera in between, you just lose out. And this is a nice segue into video. A lot of people hype the videos that you can capture on iPhones. I was dead curious to see what I was going to witness. And what I noticed was it wasn't this cut and dry win for Apple. I actually think I might do a dedicated video to this because I feel like there's a lot more I could say. But just comparing side by side the 4K 30 output, what I will say is similar to photos, Apple kind of lift everything, the shadows, the brightness. It's a clean look, and Samsung has that sort of sharp contrast look to their videos. Preference is down to what you like here. I like contrast. I like color. I like vibrancy. I just feel like the iPhone video doesn't quite give you that. There's probably a better sort of instance when it comes to things like professional stuff with the iPhone because you've got ProRes and log and HDR, and that really captures a lot of detail. File size is huge. And when you can see those two videos side by side, you really get an appreciation for what Apple do there. But just at a pure 4K 30 video side by side, I think I prefer the output on a day-to-day situation than Samsung give you because I like that pop of color. I like that vibrancy. We'll talk into camera modes and stuff in a moment, and that's where we can really dive into things like ProRes versus log and all that sort of stuff. I also wanted to just check the stabilization on both phones because I know Apple's got the sensor shift versus OIS on Samsung. Plus, I think Samsung have video digital image stabilization to apply as well. So I just want to see the difference. Here you go. That's a real scenario too, because most people will just follow their families when they're recording or follow their kids when they're playing sport. It's not going to be like this intentional, I'm going running and seeing what it's like type of thing. And each phone has something called action mode and super steady. And I just really wanted to test them out. So I tested them out in a couple of different ways. First way was handheld, and I did okay at that. I think what I noticed is that the output on the iPhone kind of was better, especially in sort of lower light and the shadow areas. And then I also wanted to test it in a different way. So I put it strapped to my chest and then went out and played a 1v1 game against my son in the backyard. And again, both did well at stabilizing the footage, but the iPhone just was better with what it captured in terms of the detail. I think that's just down to the fact that Samsung didn't process it or they haven't upgraded the super steady mode in a while, whereas Apple with the action mode have obviously added in extra cameras that it can do as well. You can see the results difference is evident. It also tested the microphones whilst also testing portrait video or cinematic video on the iPhone. Here's the results of both of those. What do you mean they're not in a top league?
Premier League's the best league.
The Premier League is the best league, but Australians can play in the Premier League.
Yeah, like who?
I don't know, like Harry Kewell did, Tim Cahill did.
Tim Cahill is not. Kind of English.
So the processing is one element. The other element is what you can actually do with the cameras, the camera app and what it allows for. I wasn't going to mention the camera control button because honestly, the first thing you should do is just disable this as a camera control button. But there's one feature you probably will want to have turned on, and that's just to launch the camera. I replicated what I have on my S25 Ultra, which is a double press of the power button to open the camera. I made the camera controller double press to launch the camera there. First thing I want to do is compare the camera settings because I feel like Apple just limit what you can do. And you are limited. I went to find the camera settings in the camera app. They're not there. You've got to go into the settings app of the phone, into camera. To their credit, there is some extensive toggles that they've added over time, and you go in and you can tweak. Once you've added something into here, it shoots it over to the camera app and it kind of stays there. But if you want to change anything or remove something, you have to go back to the settings. You can't just do it from the camera app. Samsung is so easy. It's right there. You tap on the 4-dot menu, settings, you're in. I feel like that's just such a quicker way of doing things. Especially too, because in the Samsung camera settings, there's just so much more that you can control. Not to mention all the settings that already exist, but then you go into Camera Assistant and there's a whole bunch of other stuff that you can do in there. They have similar stuff like Apple has grid lines and leveler. Samsung has smart composition guide. I think they call it shot suggestions. And then you also have grid lines and composition level and stuff in there too. So they kind of even each other out there in terms of that sort of stuff now, especially Apple have only recently added it. The camera app is my main focus here though, because that is really what separates these two cameras. Let's start with the UI, how you actually get around. Samsung's camera app, you've got all the modes down the bottom, same as Apple. With Samsung, you can see all the modes. You can see where they are, which direction you need to go in, and you can also customize them if you want. On Apple's, you see photo and video, and then you've got to guess which the one you want to and where it is. Obviously, video's on one side, photos on the other, but you still don't know where and how far you need to go. It's a bit of a process to scroll through it. It looks pretty. Liquid glass is there and looks aesthetically nice, but functionally, not my preference. In terms of operation, with iPhones, if you want to change something like a toggle, there's a menu for that. It's right in the top right corner. And with a phone this big, you've got to adjust all the way to it, click on it, bring it down. Bit hard to do that with a phone this size. On Samsung, you've got the 4-dot menu in the bottom right corner. You click on that, it slides out, stays in that lower third where your thumb sort of will rest. Everything you want to do with iPhone has to be done in that top half or the top of the screen. Change resolution, bring that menu, all of it has to be done up there. And then it brings it down or you just keep changing it up there. It's a bit of a hassle, bit of a hand gymnastics you got to do. Editing Dan here. Just after I finished filming, I noticed with the camera app, if you swipe up on the mode, it brings the extra toggles into effect through this animation. But it's not immediately obvious that that's there. And again, it kind of goes back to what Linus was saying about the AirPods and recording. It's a little bit frustrating that these settings and toggles exist, but Apple don't make it clear and obvious. They'd rather style over the substance of the feature. That's part of the reason why I vibe more with Samsung's camera app than Apple's is because of that. Anyway, keep going with the video. Whereas on Samsung, anything you want to do, that sort of stuff, you can do it at the top, or that 4-dot menu lets you do it down the bottom. I also like how much easier it is to switch between selfie cameras or the rear cameras. You just swipe up or down on the Samsung one, whereas Apple, you just have to press the button. Not a big deal though, it's just an extra thing. I will say the iPhone has probably a better zoom mechanic if you're sort of scrolling quickly between the zooms. The scrolling wheel on the iPhone versus the scrolling bar on Samsung. Much prefer the scroll wheel, although in video, the smooth video slider with Samsung gives you that option for more cinematic zooming, get your words right. Then we have camera modes, what you can actually do with the camera. And here is where I have a fundamental difference of opinion with what Apple does, because they have camera modes, they exist, but they're very limited in their function. With Samsung, they give you everything and it's all native. Apple, you probably have to download a third-party app and know which one you want to download. Samsung do as much as they can to fit it into the native camera solution, so you don't have to go searching for it. Apple have cinematic video, which is portrait video on Samsung. They have all the other usual stuff like super slow-mo and panorama. That's all there, portrait photos. But then that kind of is the limitation. Action mode also exists versus super steady. That's another sort of parody one, but I think Samsung had super steady first, but that's not the point of this. It's not an argument. It's just what they have. Apple's got this new recording mode they brought in this year called dual capture. Interesting, because Samsung did this years ago, and I specifically remember people saying it's not necessary. Okay, is it now? Because you've got it now, but you've got it in the way that Samsung did it before. A couple of years ago from Samsung, it was called Director's View, and then they've changed it to be dual recording, because how they've changed it is that you can now record from any two cameras, except for the 5x telephoto, at the same time, and save them as separate clips. So if you wanted to then jump in and have a close-up and a zoomed-out one, you can. I did it down at football training the other day. The kids were doing the free kick training, and I wanted to record it. With dual recording on Samsung, I was able to get the wide-angle shot and the scope of everything that was happening, and then also the zoomed-in shot as the ball was hitting the net. With dual capture on iPhone, it was just my reaction and the wide angle shot. And then if I needed to, I could zoom in, but I really don't see the point in having that, because if you want to capture something, you want two angles of it. I really like Samsung's solution here. Now, I guess that's covering what's similar, because there's some similar stuff on both you can get out of it. Now let's look at what's uniquely different on each one. I want to start with the iPhone, probably because the list is shorter, but there's some powerful stuff in here, especially around video. Apple enabled ProRes, ProRes Log, and ProRes HDR. The ProRes stuff is wild because the file sizes are huge, but it just captures so much good information and detail in the video. The log is really good, but also so is the fact that it's just crisp, and you can see that from the output that you're seeing on the screen now. As a creator, it's very appealing to me. I'm not the best at color grading, and that's probably why I lean towards Samsung's log solution, because with Samsung's log, I can actually color grade it on the phone itself automatically before sending it for editing. As I covered, Apple shoots natively in 24 megapixels as a resolution. You can bump it up to 48 should you want to, but the 24 is the native, and that's plenty of detail. What you also get from the iPhone is the option to do 4K 120 from the native camera video app, whereas in Samsung, 4K 120 is only in Pro Video mode, so you have to go into there to do it. Much for muchness, Pro Video mode is an advantage because you get all of the controls in there, but the fact is you have to do that first to get 4K 120. But honestly, that's pretty much where the advantages kind of end from a function point of view. Well, when you don't consider the selfie camera, which I've already covered. Let's go through Samsung's list, because on their side, you've got the resolution, which is 200 at its maximum. I wouldn't say it's much of an advantage in standard photos. It's more of an advantage in Expert RAW, because you go 200 megapixel Expert RAW photo, detail plus raw, awesome. But then you've just got an excess of modes to dive into. Top of my list, single take. Single take is far and away the thing that will keep me on Samsung forever. The fact I can point the camera at a subject, in my instance, it's my family and my kids, and they can be playing anywhere. And because I've got the zoom, I can punch in closer to them, and then that way I can capture it the moment, and single take will do everything it needs to create an album of photos or videos. Superb. And then in video mode, you've got toggles like auto framing, where if you've got a tripod, you can put the phone on that tripod, and auto framing will basically act like a cameraman, where it will just follow you around whilst being stationary, using the cameras on the phone to zoom in and out. And it's great because you can jump into the moment with your kids, play one-on-one in the backyard, and the camera will follow you and keep you in the frame. It's amazing. Samsung also has log, which, yep, spoken about, compared it to ProRes Log. Obviously, it doesn't capture the same detail as what ProRes Log does, but it's there. And Samsung also has 8K, which you can do 8K 30 with Log. But then Samsung has something fun, the More tab, where you can actually go in and see more. You've got food mode, you've got dedicated Pro modes and Pro Video modes, both for Pro Photography, Pro Video. And then the best one of all is Expert RAW. Samsung have done something weird with Expert RAW with oneui 8 and the final build. I'm hoping that they can fix it, because Expert RAW as an app with the processing is unmatched. The options, the flexibility, it's just the best camera app that Samsung have. And I just hope that they can bring that stuff into the native camera app, because everyone should be able to experience 24 megapixel as a native resolution. It's so good. Then you've got the extra features that Expert will give you. Virtual aperture, ND filter. You've got astrophotography sort of information in there. It's quite incredible, the extensive list of stuff you can do. You just don't get that camera control on iPhones. It's by design by Apple. They don't tend to want to overwhelm people. And if people want to, they can search more and other people can download APKs and apps. They can't download APKs on iPhones. You get my point though. You can go in searching of purpose-built stuff, third party. Samsung though, they give you everything. And if you want it, it's there. And if you don't worry about it. I think with the iPhone, the camera is probably the only part of the phone that I vibe with the most, particularly when it comes to some of the video professional stuff that it's got on offer. And of course, that selfie camera. But that might be where my likeness for the iPhone ends, because software is next. iOS 26 versus oneui 8. This could be a bit of a bloodbath. Well, not really. But here's my statement that sort of sums it all up before I get into the nitty-gritty. iOS is kind of like this high-end luxury bag, like a fashion statement. It looks great. This is talking about the bag. It looks great. It's made of nice materials, and it's a great accessory to walk around with, and everyone will know that it looks nice. Functionally, though, it sucks. No pockets, no compartments. It's just a mess on the inside, but it looks visually nice on the outside. oneui, granted, is not visually as appealing with its polish. It's getting there. Is more like a commuter backpack where it's got compartments and pockets and areas to store things for days. It's practical and it's functional, whilst also still giving you something that's kind of nice to look at along the way. And the thing is with oneui is if you don't like a compartment, if you don't like a function, you can swap it out, take it out, remove it, and add in something else. It's so flexible in that way. I highlighted some of this in my initial impressions because jumping from oneui into an iPhone is just such a different experience. They have different ideas of what a phone should do with its software. I want to take the photo app as an example of this because I noticed this as I've been using it. I got an email sent to me with a Dropbox link full of photos from an event that I went to, and I wanted to download those images. So I went to download it on my iPhone, and then I tried to find where it went. I couldn't find it. I could not find it. And for the life of me, I couldn't understand why it just didn't automatically add it to the Photos app in a folder called Downloads. Why isn't it there? I don't understand. On the Samsung, did the same thing, downloaded it in the exact same way, went to my gallery, bang, there it is. In the Recent tab, first photo there. It just doesn't make sense to me. I've figured out since that iPhone has this app called Files, and if you download something, it goes to there. Such a weird place to put something that's a photo. Shouldn't it just go to the photos? I don't get it. The Photos app might look pretty, might have these liquid glass animations, but it functionally is a disaster. But honestly, sitting here and nitpicking stuff I don't like about iOS could be here all day. Because actually there is some nice stuff that I should highlight. So I want to focus on 3 key areas: interactions, productivity and AI, and customization. Let's start with interactions first. Starting with the quick panel versus the control center. I would say that functionally, these offer 2 very similar ideas. A little area where you can go and toggle things about your phone that you want to change, whether that be brightness control, volume, toggle off Bluetooth, it's all in there. The control center, way more customizable. Apple have truly opened up the customization of that page and pages because you can add in more and you can expand toggles out, you can make things resized, actually quite nice aesthetically. Quick panel, you can customize it. Things can be moved around and reshuffled, and you have the option to control the quick panel through things like Good Lock, but that is kind of it. There's no way of changing the toggles out or expanding them or reforming them. You can't remove anything. It's all there. But the way you access these panels is where Samsung takes the cake. It just does. oneui is far more amenable to one-handed usage versus iOS. The ability to just swipe down from anywhere on the screen, on the home screen that is, to bring the quick panel or the notifications down is so good because you don't need to perform hand gymnastics to get there. Swipe, swipe, done. With the iPhone, you've got to really maneuver your way up, swipe it down, and then you've got it. But then to get rid of it, it's a bit of a functional thing as well. You've got to either tap, or if there's no extra page, you can swipe. It's just weird things like that I don't understand. But then I also can't go from Control Center to notifications. Obviously, that's just a thing I'm used to. Not everyone might need to do that. But when you're used to that and you want to go, you know what, I got a notification. Oh, I need to check this as well. Swipe across. You can't do that here. It's just quite odd that it doesn't exist. The notifications for me are another example of like visuals over substance, because when you swipe down the notification panel, it brings the lock screen down, removes your background and just makes it the lock screen. It does look nice. The depth effect with the clock and the background interacting with each other is good, but the notifications are a bit of a visual mess. That liquid glass doesn't make the notifications stand out very well. One UI 8's aesthetic isn't much better, but it's practical because you can see the notifications, you can swipe them away, no problem. And visually, at least, you understand what's happening. And I can have that ability to swipe back and forth between notifications and the quick panel. The notifications on the iOS are a bit of a chore to get rid of. There's only one way you can swipe, to the left. If I try to swipe the other way, I bring up news, and then trying to swipe again, I accidentally bring up the camera. It's just a bit of a confusing interaction. So I'd rather just hit the X and hit clear all, because at least I can do that. If I couldn't do that, wow. Productivity features are next. I discovered a couple of neat ones on iOS 26. What I really liked the ability to do was when I did a screenshot, although I did find this really odd screenshot bug where it actually just won't take a screenshot. I have to lock the phone, unlock it, and then bring the screenshot back. Odd. But if I get the screenshot done, brings up the thumbnail of the screenshot, long press, swipe to open up an app, drop it in, attaches it. Love that. But I then went to see if I could do it on my Samsung. And you can. The exact same process works. But that's just the base for the Samsung, because on top of that, you have all the other productivity features with multitasking. Then I also used edge panels, where if I was watching something or had something open on the screen, drop an app into a pop-up view from edge panels. Swift. And that is multitasking, because you can have a video open at the top. You can take notes in that video using the S Pen on the bottom. Just this interactivity with multi-window and the way you can get more done, I much prefer that on Samsung because it's the option that's there. Tried to do that on the iPhone, and obviously no multi-window exists. So rather than show you all in detail, I just want to show you a list of things that you can do on Samsung you can't do on iOS 26. Split screen, pop-up windows, edge panels, AI select, which is great because it screenshots just a portion of the screen instead of the whole thing. Clipboard, how iOS still doesn't have a clipboard that stores everything in it, I don't get. And what I also figured out is when you screenshot something on Samsung, it actually copies it into the keyboard, so you can paste it directly into a message. iOS doesn't do that. It doesn't recognize that a picture's been copied and take it with you. Neither does text. I don't understand. And probably the biggest one of all is the no number row in the stock keyboard. I had to download a third-party keyboard to get that. And even with that third-party keyboard, there's still no down arrow key to drop the keyboard down. Breathe. You get my point. There's a lot of productivity sort of features on device that just don't exist in iPhone land. Again, probably by design, because if you want to get more done, they'll sell you an iPad. Samsung try to give you as much that you can do on one device without needing to go to another one. The biggest example of that is Samsung DeX. You can just plug your phone in to a monitor and you get yourself a desktop experience. And it's just such a big benefit of the Samsung phones to have that. All right, we get it. I could talk about DeX all day, and I have in other videos, so you can go check them out. But I'll just say it, Samsung DeX is an advantage. The thing is, iOS has stuff too, like No, I shouldn't say that. It's got plenty of productivity features like, obviously I'm being silly. I know that you can do a lot of work stuff on iOS, especially with all the app support that Apple have got. Third-party apps rush to develop for iOS, and they have a lot of support there. But the thing is, a lot of the native productivity stuff that exists on iOS relies on the Apple ecosystem. You need to have the iPad, you need to have the MacBook. It needs to have that interconnectivity, or else the productivity kind of doesn't work. It relies on each other as opposed to just being a singular product. No more so than features like AirDrop, where it requires that other product to share things to. And a lot of the other stuff that you can find on iOS, like that stuff I showed before, Samsung have got too. So there's no real separation from Apple unless you've got the ecosystem. But even if you had Samsung in the ecosystem, you still get all those things there on that side. Then there's the hardware and software on Samsung that kind of mix together through the S Pen. The S Pen is such a unique advantage that no other phone can have. I mentioned this as part of the design earlier in the fact that Samsung have made the phone this thin and still fit an S Pen in there. And the S Pen can just do so much. I actually, the other day, had two use cases back to back. Firstly, I was on the phone to someone and they said, "Have you got a pen?" Yes. So I needed to get my S Pen out, wrote it down, bang. And then I was having lunch with my wife and we were going through the renovations of our house that we're moving into soon. And we needed to visually draw something out. Again, using the S Pen and ScreenWrite, I was able to annotate over the picture to get a visual over what we were talking about. And then there's the other stuff. There's things like being able to write grocery lists. There's things like being able to write football teams down as a coach. It's such a useful tool. So much can be done with this S Pen. And I think a lot of people don't give it enough credit, especially iPhone users. Then there's Galaxy AI versus Apple Intelligence. And I feel like I shouldn't even really bring this up because it's not even a contest. Galaxy AI is just more functional and has more about it. And that's evident when you see the list of things that Galaxy AI can do. And then you go into the Apple Intelligence menu and there's basically bare. Apple have not done a very good job in rolling out AI. That's pretty evident. They kind of retracted a lot of the stuff that they'd spoken about and then pretty much just threw ChatGPT in there as like an extension that you can add to try and at least have something. Because the only real Apple Intelligence features that I found were writing tools and then Playground. Everything else is kind of just like meh. The first thing I tested actually was Cleanup versus Generative Edit. And Generative Edit just absolutely smacked it. I took a photo of my desk and it was messy. And I just wanted to remove things. And the iPhone just couldn't get a grasp on it. Whereas Generative Edit, obviously with a combination of processing on the device and cloud, just absolutely smashed it. It's so good. It's so good to have. But then the other stuff that you've got in there, Galaxy AI shows you the list, shows you what each function does and where to go to use it. Things like Samsung Internet, being able to summarize a website and then have it be read aloud. Things like being able to auto format inside Samsung Notes. Apple really only offer writing tools. That's their only thing that they've kind of got when you select any sort of text in any app is the ability to sort of have writing tools available. Samsung have got them too. Same situation, same way of accessing it as well. But it's just about not knowing where to go with Apple Intelligence, where to access certain things. Then there's like the extra touches, like Samsung have got things like Now Brief, which summates a bunch of things about your day and gives it to you at certain intervals throughout the day as well. Nothing like that exists on iPhone. They've got this thing called notification summaries, which will summarize and group notifications at certain points throughout the day. Nice touch. It kind of gives you a summary of what's in there. But the way the notifications menu looks, it's so clustered that it's really hard to find and read that stuff anyway. The thing about Galaxy AI is it's just more widespread. It's kind of everywhere on the phone, especially in all of Samsung's native stuff. And even now it's starting to integrate more with third party. Like Samsung obviously have got Gemini on board, and Gemini is the default assistant on your Samsung. Also things like Circle to Search, being able to visually search what's on their screen. Apple have Siri, okay. And then also Apple have Visual Intelligence, which uses the camera in a similar way. What I laughed at was the fact that Apple's Visual Intelligence is powered by Google. So I had to laugh at that because they kind of don't have that partnership with Google in the same way Samsung does. Obviously, Samsung's using Android as a platform, so they get that tight integration. Apple probably had to go to them and say, hey, we need help. Apple have got this thing called Playground, which is like a generative image app where you can generate images based on prompts. Samsung have also got that through Drawing Assist. The Drawing Assist one gives you more flexibility in the way that you can actually draw and have a text prompt as well as a photo prompt, whereas Apple is just a photo prompt and a text prompt. The thing with Apple's is that the results are quite quick. It does produce results and multiple results. It just keeps producing results. And then Samsung just gives you one. In terms of what they're producing, much of a muchness. They just have their own interpretation and there's different styles. Apple have ChatGPT in there as well, whereas Samsung is just their own service. This video keeps going. Then we have performance. For me, performance is probably one where you just can't deny that Apple have got it going on. The A19 Pro is just a well-equipped, well-performing chip. The Snapdragon 8 Elite for Galaxy, excellent chip. Performs well, benchmarks really well, and in certain tasks, does everything well. The thing where I've noticed though is that for like really intensive tasks like video exporting, especially in Premiere Rush, Apple breezed through it. Samsung just couldn't hold a candle to the speed that the iPhone did it at. But then when I did it in LumaFusion, it was reversed. LumaFusion have a partnership with Samsung, and that's kind of maybe why I think it's more optimized, because it absolutely smashed the iPhone at video exporting in LumaFusion. So probably just will come down to optimization for the chip, but definitely from a performance ceiling, iPhone has it. Also tested Lightroom, same thing. iPhone breezed through the export versus the S25 Ultra. But the thing I found with performance is it's not just about that pure output. For me, it's what you can actually do with the stuff that Apple have enabled. And I just don't find enough. Like with Samsung, you've got DeX, you've got multitasking, you've got all the productivity stuff, you've got Galaxy AI. Apple just haven't seemed to have enough about it. A lot of people are saying, big reviewers are saying that, oh, it's down to what they're planning. Like, well, you can't review a phone based off what it's going to do in 3 years' time. You need to focus on what it's giving you. And at the moment, Apple said last year's phone were Apple Intelligence ready, and they didn't deliver. What are they meant to say? This is Pro ready, and they not deliver again? I don't know. That's not something I buy into. What is something I know straight away is battery. Editing Dan here. The battery is phenomenal. Like last night, it was like at 61% when I went to bed, and I woke up at 60%. I didn't capture it, but whoa. The 17 Pro Max is going to be a battery performer. It just will. I don't have any qualms about its battery performance in life. It's going to do excellent numbers. The S25 Ultra is standard as a battery performer. It will do a great job and get you through the day. The iPhone likely will get you a little bit into day 2 as well. Kind of reminds me of like a MacBook Pro, that M series efficiency. The iPhone's got it too. Because Apple matched their design this year to enable that. You know, the aluminium unibody, and then the fact that ditched the titanium and then put in a vapor chamber. They really went about trying to make sure this thing will stay powerful for longer. I just wish you could do more, because there's not much you can do. Like it has these top creator features like ProRes RAW, which is an example of something it can do, right? But you then can't do anything with it really on the phone. Like if I wanted to then take that to a monitor, I would need a MacBook Pro to airdrop that to. Whereas with Samsung, if I wanted to edit on the phone too, you've got the LumaFusion app that you can plug into DeX and get it all done through one. It's got all this power, the iPhone, but hasn't done enough, I feel, to take advantage of it. Doing this comparison, as extensive as I've done it, kind of reinforces to me why I've been a Samsung user for so long. Because whilst it might not be the prettiest with its software, whilst it might not have the power that iPhones have got from a raw chipset level, functionally, they just let you do more. You can express yourself a bit more, whether it be through customizing your home screen, whether it be good lock customizations that you can add on, whether it be camera modes, which allow you to capture moments more creatively. There's just more about it that lets you express yourself more. If you want a simple smartphone where you can ramp it up if you know what you're doing and you know where to look multiple times over, then the iPhone kind of gives you that, because at its base, it just does what it needs to. Swipe up, and if you're just in doubt, just swipe home and you'll get to where you need to be. And then the settings menus give you some toggles, and then that's it. But you can keep it very basic. Samsung literally is as basic if you want it to be, but then it just extends out more. If you want to open up and do more things on your phone, you've got that option. Don't like something? Turn it off. Want to add something? Toggle it on. Don't like where it's sitting on the home screen? Move it. Move it anywhere. Move it literally anywhere. You've got all of that option. I've never compared two phones that have a fundamental difference in approach to smartphones as I've done here, because I usually just compare two Samsung phones. So it was really interesting for me to see this. I also want to know your takeaways. So jump in the comments and let me know. This is a big video to put together, so I'd appreciate all of your help. So let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one after you hit subscribe.